Yo, good day, gents, and welcome to another episode of Father's Fire. My name's Jody Sedrick, and every week we get together to explore the joys, the challenges, the triumphs, the sorrows, and yes, the fun of being a dad. And today was kind of a challenge because my wife sent me a little message. She's like, hey, could you take care of dinner? So in my mind, I'm like, all right, March 7th, it should be good enough for a barbecue. And I actually barbecue all winter. So I go out there and get some fried chicken, get the barbecue going, and it starts snowing on me. And then I'm halfway done and I run out of propane. So I ended up having to pull it into the house and bake it. And so, yeah, it's just one of those days. And you can hear I have somebody as a guest. He's laughing at me in the background. Kirk Evans, how are you?
Good. I'm doing well.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to visit. You and I've been trying to do this for a number of months, and I appreciate that you finally made some time for me. So.
Well, I mean, it's life, brother. I mean, things happen, and it doesn't work out, and you allot a time, and all of a sudden that allotment comes spreads out to 2 or 3 months, right? So
I know it's like it's like sometimes you're in the game, sometimes you're running along the sidelines, and sometimes you're running out of bounds.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you taking the time. You and I have become. I'd almost say we've become friends over the past year and a half or so.
I consider you a close friend. Absolutely. Yeah. We bond at different capacities and different levels. And I've been lucky enough to call you a friend and meet you in the past. So it's been good.
Yeah, it's been fun, and that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed over the 3 years that I've done this podcast. When I started out doing the podcast, my goal was to highlight and tell stories about my dad, my experience being a dad. I wanted to find other men who were trying to be good fathers or who were overcoming, the past and trying to figure out how to become a good dad, whether they didn't have a dad or that they themselves had addiction or whatever that they were working through. And I'm like, you know what? Help me find men that are willing to share their story, their experience, their insight. And so I really appreciate you being willing to talk. So let's start out and let's just talk about your family a bit and what's your makeup?
I tell you, growing up, I didn't come from a broken home. I was fortunate enough to have a father and mother that loved me very dearly. Growing up until I was a young adult, I thought my father hated me. Okay. I thought he hated me because he was a generation before me that was a hard worker, corrected criticism. And I thought that meant like he hated me. Like I thought he hated me for years. And no, he just wanted me to be my best. So I was a mingle between Generation X and millennials. So I was that precus of generations. So it developed me into who I was now. So I'm kind of hard nosed. I've got a mixture of the modern age and the old school way. And that's really developed me into how I work and how I raise my children. I've got 3 kids. I got a beautiful wife that saved my life. Let me tell you what, watching my kids grow and develop into who they are today is, it's been a blessing. And I wish I could go back and recoup some of that time when they were babies, because you think they're going to be babies forever. And, you don't have any, you don't really have any gauge of time at that particular time when they're babies. You think it's going to be like that forever. And before you know it, my oldest is in college, and, man, I wish I could go back and spend time with them at a different time. Anytime they said, hey, Daddy, come check this out. Look at this drawing. Look at this little picture. Look what I did. I'm like, yeah, honey, I'm watching a show. And I ignored so many small things. I wish I could go back. And, I got better. I got better as time went along. My son was 5 years later. My daughter was 5 years after that. So I figured it out a little bit better at a time.
Yeah, that first child, they're kind of they get the worst version of you as a dad, but
they do. I mean, we grew up together, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny because just last week on Facebook, I posted a picture. I was going back through the first year that we adopted our kids, and I'm so glad I did this. I created a blog. It was called adoptingdad.wordpress.com, and I just every couple of weeks I would talk about our experience as a family, the journey of going to Miami, getting the kids, and the adjustments we had to make. And so I was, looking through these stories and reading them and seeing some of the pictures when the kids were 8, 9, 14. And it's amazing how little they were, right? And I posted on that. It's like, dude, I blinked and they were 8. I blinked again and they're all in college or moving out. And it really does go so fast. And when you're in the middle of it, you're like, oh gosh, how am I going to survive?
All you want to do is provide, right? You thought success was like, I'm busy, I'm making money, I'm providing. Well, one thing I've learned personally is like, you can't buy time. And knowing how much money I made, I can't reverse time. So I can't re-spend that time with my kids. And each stage of childhood is so important as a father and as that child too. So I missed a lot of opportunities that I wish I would have went back. I wasn't absent. Don't get me wrong. I was present. I was there, and they molded my life. I mean, they really, that was my time. Any extra time was to my children, but I wish I could slow it down or redid some things. But that's like anything. I think, you can hyper critique yourself. You can develop yourself in someone that you're not, and make you think you're less or more than you were. And I think I'm a good father, but I wish I would have slowed down just a little bit,
Yeah. I want to go back to the beginning of our conversation, to you and your dad. Yeah. When and how did you discover that your dad really did love you, and that's just the way his parenting style was?
Well, I think I always knew it. And I never really knew my grandpa really well. He had some severe strokes by the time I knew him. So he wasn't really vocal at that time. He was around, but I didn't see that transgression from grandfather to father to me to son, so right. I didn't understand how that went. So I just judged my dad, and I thought he was being hard on me. He hated me, but that was just a really naive, narrow viewpoint. I had no perspective. So as he pushed me to be more, because he knew that I was more, he knew that my talents. He saw me growing up, and he had perspective. I had zero perspective. So I thought he just hated me, but I learned that was corrective criticism. And even today, I even implement that to my employees and my children as well, too. And it's hard. It's hard to watch them break down and tear up and big crocodile tears in their eyes. But I know it's for their well-being, because I know they know I love them, just like I know my dad loved me too, and my mother too, but my mom was gentler, she was more understanding. Dad was just rough and gruff, right? He didn't want me to be it's probably not the proper vernacular right now, but he didn't want me to be a sissy. He didn't want me to be soft, and I get that. So I was tough. I was raised tough. I'm tough to this day, and it gave me vigilance to persevere through daily challenges, not only through fatherhood, but through society, negative impact on society, how they come at me, church life, business, everything. So it really raised me to the man I am today.
So let me ask you a question. So looking back at how your dad was a dad to you and gave you constructive criticism, how have you is probably the better. Have you changed the delivery?
Yeah. So that's one thing I said that, I was probably a little bit more soft early on than I should have been, because I was like, I'm never going to be like my dad, right? I'm never going to be that guy. And, to be fair, he was a stronger man than I am, because he is able to deliver that to me harshly, which it was corrective criticism, and knowing that he had to be that way because I was just naive, and he trained me to be harder and tougher and persevere through problems. And I was more gentle with my kids, thinking that was a better way. I'm not sure if it was or not. I just don't know. There's an analogy that soft time makes hard men, hard time makes soft men, so on and so forth. So he made it harder on me. I think he created a better individual in me, and I don't know if I passed that along as well because I softened up a little bit with my children. So each generation has a little bit better,
Yeah, and I love that statement, right? Each generation has a little better, especially when you have a solid foundation to build on, right? You were blessed with a dad in the home. He was present.
Yeah.
Yes, he was firm and he was strict. He was very direct, and sometimes you're like, man, does he even like me? Right?
No, I didn't know.
So,
yeah.
So now you're like going, all right, I see what my dad was trying to do, and I'm trying to take the best of my dad, but I'm also trying to implement it in a way that's comfortable for me and comfortable for my kids. And like sometimes the pendulum swings to the other extreme, and you're like, whoa, maybe I need to come back a little bit in the middle. And you gave a little bit of credit to your wife about saving your life. I suspect that your wife had a lot to do with that swinging of the pendulum.
Absolutely. Yeah. So not many people know that I was married prior to my current wife now. And I thought I knew her, my ex-wife, as an individual. I thought I loved her, but she was, I'm not going to talk negative about her, but she made me realize that not everybody is what they are at face value. So after that divorce and that split, that's where my first child came from, my oldest child now. And I realized that not everybody's at face value. For a long time, I was on the path of destruction. What I mean by that was I gave all of my kids, but if I was in public, I was angry. I was holding a grudge. I have a chip on my shoulder. So, we went out. If I went out, I was picking fights. I was screaming, yelling. I was really, really rough on the surface. And that wasn't who I was in my heart, but I was protecting myself because I got hurt so bad. I didn't know what hurt was until that happened. And that was tough. That was a tough realization to happen. I grew up in martial arts, so I fought a lot. That was kind of second nature to me. So as I entered adulthood and I got my heart broken, that's all I knew was defense. So I was very defensive to everybody, whether it be a female or male or anything. I wasn't abusive. I'm not saying I beat up anybody, but I was gruff. I wasn't my best self. Luckily, God had a different plan. I think it was divine intervention that sent me my current wife now that really pulled me out of that slump, of that valley. And I think everything's seasons, right? I think we go through seasons for a purpose, and we're built for a purpose. We have a reason to help others at a certain capacity. And I think God sent me my current wife now that we have our kids with now that made me understand a better life, who people were as an individual. And I didn't have to judge everybody off that initial experience as a marriage. So it was quite an adjustment. So
I think one of the things that a lot of men struggle with, especially when they've been hurt by someone that they've opened their heart to, right? Their go-to response is to put up a wall and go on the defensive, or in your case, and many other men's case, they go on the offensive, right? So everything's an offense, everything's an affront. And it's not that you're really offended, you're just afraid. That you're going to get your heart broken again. It's like, and so how did you walk that path of learning how to trust again, to open your heart again, and ultimately become a gentler person, as you're walking through life?
Let me tell you, it wasn't easy. It didn't happen overnight. Even when I met my wife, and I know it was God sent because she was so patient with me, and she put up with so much with me, and saw something that I no longer saw myself, and a lot of that was faith. I mean, she did have faith in a higher power that I forgot about. I was raised in church, and I remember those nuances, of faith and love and compassion. I forgot them. After my first wife destroyed who I was as an individual, I lost who I was as a man. And I was a young man at the time, but I forgot who I was. And when I met my current wife now, when we were dating, she went to church for years, and she was following Christ, had a family in church, and her father and mother was a great support system for me at first, but I just didn't go. I didn't submit to that. And really, I have to say, the main shift to me that happened was when I turned my life over to Christ at that time. That was the changing point. It really was. It didn't happen overnight. It happened a little bit at a time. So the changes happened a little at a time. So God started sculpting me into who he created me to be. He started erasing those doubts, those subconscious thoughts that Satan probably puts in my mind and my heart, thinking I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy enough to do these things. And but God reminded me who he built me to be, who the gifts he gave me, that I have an opportunity to impact not only my current family, but extended friends and acquaintances I meet in the future. And one day when we pass along, maybe I'll find that out. And that's how I live my life today is faith driven. So nothing is insurmountable if you're driven by faith, right? So God changed my life. Let me tell you, that's my testimony. It really is. I mean, it's a lot deeper than that, and I can go on for hours, but that's really the basics of it.
Well, and I love that, that you're willing to share, this was my journey and this is my testimony. Sure. And there was a nugget in there that I think is really important. And that nugget is that we become a better man little by little, moment by moment, right? And a lot of times we get frustrated with where we are, and we don't see the actual changes that have been taking place little by little, moment by moment, conversation by conversation. And I remember, one time when I was on a 50-miler hike with the kids and with my son Christian and the scouts in our church. And we were climbing up this hill, and it was steep, right? And and it was easy if I looked up to be discouraged, right? And instead of going, all right, I'm going to look at every single step, make sure every step is in the right place, and just get into a rhythm, right? And all of a sudden you're climbing up this mountain and we reach this plateau, and then you look back and you look how far you've come. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the way life is as we're growing as men, as husbands, as fathers. A lot of times we're looking up the mountain going, I want to be this and I'm not here. And how am I going to get here? And when we focus on each little step of progress, next thing we wake up and we're not the man we were when we started the journey. We're someone new.
We forget the bask. We forget to bask in the moment. We forget to take a moment and look around, and society has a lot to do with that, like confining us men to a space, I think, because they expect us to be, we're built how God made us. Okay. So we're supposed to be leaders and dominant. We're supposed to be hunters. We're supposed to be protectors. But society puts us in a box where those are toxic traits, right? So being protective or aggressive is toxic. And I don't think that's true. That's how we were built. We're supposed to beat our chests a little bit, a certain capacity against a balance, So we should protect our wife, our kids, and our loved ones. And society currently has put us in a box where they shame that. It's like, well, you need to back down a little bit. And I don't particularly agree with all of that right now. There's a balance. I think life has a balance. I think everything does. And I want to pass that along to my kids. Like, it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be angry, but it's how you act on your anger. It's okay to be sad, but it's what you do next. It's okay to fall down to the bottom, but it's what you do next that defines you as a human being, not as a man, but in general, everybody. And that's why I teach my kids now. I tell my son, because I get him as, he's a male. So when he's going through puberty, he's 14 years old. And when he gets angry and he's like, "Oh, I'm so angry," I'm like, "It's okay, son. You can be angry, but it's what you do next that means the most. It's how you use that anger for a benefit. What do you learn from this anger? What's next?" And anger is okay. Sadness is okay. Happiness is great, but God says this too shall pass. So if you're high, this will pass. If you're low, this will pass. Everything's a season. So as you take that in stride, I think it's important to remember that it's just a moment in time. It's just a season. Like God makes seasons, 4 seasons out of the year. We also have those seasons as individuals as well.
Yeah. I love that you're taking the time to allow your son to have space to be angry. But as importantly is to giving them space to embrace that anger, to embrace that frustration, going, all right, now what? What do we need to do with those feelings?
Right.
And I think a lot of young men struggle because they haven't been taught how to navigate and embrace those feelings that are very real. They're very raw.
Yeah,
and it's okay to have those feelings, but we haven't done a good job. And it sounds like you have in your family. You've done a better job of teaching your son how to navigate those feelings into a positive direction.
Yeah. If you shame the emotions, it negates the real emotion. I mean, and I know this by experience because my dad was shamed I'd be angry. So I thought that was a shameful act and I didn't know how to cope with it. I thought I was embarrassed to do that, and if I was super happy, and it really controlled my emotions, my peaks as a whole. So if I was super sad, I'm not allowed to be sad. I'm not allowed to be angry. I can't be super happy. So it just mellow-toned me. And I realized that's not the way to be. It's okay to be angry. Pour it out. If you pour it out, you're holding a bomb, a fuse bomb right here in your face. It's going to blow up eventually, right? So if you hold them all in, you can't control what's next. It's going to blow up. We're just humans. We're not superhuman. We're not God figures. We're built to a certain capacity to be empaths, to absorb emotions and feelings and anger and love and all this. So we have to deal with them as they're coming towards us. If we don't, eventually we're going to explode. And I deal with that today still. As I'm 40 years old. I still deal with those heights. I'm super angry. I just keep burying, and I explode, and we just can't do that. We got to figure out how to vent that a little at a time so we can maintain at a certain capacity, right?
Yeah. I like your analogy of that there's different seasons. And I think, of the scriptures that says there's a time to laugh, a time to dance, a time to mourn, and I think, teaching our kids that, it's okay to be joyful and happy. It's okay to be sad and sorrowful. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be disappointed. It's okay to be proud of who you've become along the journey. Right. And I think that empowers our kids to embrace what it means to be a man, a woman, a young boy, a young girl. Right. And it's helping them realize that it is a journey of discovery of who they are and who they can become by teaching them how to embrace these seasons of life.
Yeah. It's funny you bring that up in Ecclesiastes chapter 3. It speaks of that as a time for war. There's a time for peace. There's a time for love. There's a time for hate. There's a time for everything. Okay. It's a balance. I mean, that's biblical. Right. So God says that, and he understands our emotions. We're created in his image. So he understands that as a core value. So there's no need to be ashamed of any of these things if there's a time for all these things. I mean, Christ, even when he came into a tabernacle, he flipped the tables, right? He was so angry. Anger is okay with purpose, is how you deal with anger. So there's purpose behind all the emotions we have. And there's a season for all those emotions, but you can't dwell in them. You can't be angry all the time or depressed all the time. That's not what we're called to do. That's not who we're built to be as men and women, as humans. That's not what we're created to be. So we're built for more. We're built to impact not only our current family, but once we master that, we're built to testify to to other people, so we can build them up too. That's falling, that's tripping, that's in the mud, right? So we can lift them up so they can relate to us and say, hey, other people's experience these problems too. And I think it's the purpose of this podcast. I really do. That we really need to make it real. We really need to make it like you're not alone in this. I don't care how dark it is right now. There's a light. There's a light at the end of this tunnel, and it may seem grim, but there's a tree right in front of your face, but there's a whole forest that you don't see right now, and other people can see it. So I think it's important differentiation between the two, and understanding that there's more to it than the right now. There's a big picture and with purpose, right?
Yeah. So looking back, because so you have a 14-year-old. How old are your kids?
I've got she's about to turn 19 on 19th of March. That's my oldest. Okay. So I've got a 14-year-old boy and I got a 10-year-old girl. So they're pretty spaced out, about 4.5 years.
You're right in the middle of a lot of changes, right?
Yeah. There's a lot happening.
Your oldest is like on the edge of moving out. Your 14-year-old's trying to figure out where he is, trying to figure out how he's going to become a man, because those changes start changing, coming upon your body, your mind, your spirit. I mean, your emotions. Yeah. And then you got that 10-year-old. Right? So you're in the fun season. I'm in the thick of it. Right. Especially because we were so active as a family. I mean, we went to every single event, whether it was jazz concerts, art exhibits, to cross country, to basketball, to volleyball. I mean, and it's so much fun. So looking, considering where you are, right, and there's still a whole journey of learning that's about to slap you in the face, right? But looking what you've gone through so far, what are some key things that you've discovered that you think are critical for men to do in their homes?
I think you need to slow down and not overreact on every little circumstance, and back up and get the whole picture, because we can overreact. What we don't realize as a father, every little bit of overreaction has a larger impact on our children, because they have no perspective. Okay. They don't see that we're stressed. They don't see that we have a hard load, that mortgages due, electric is due, car payments due, all these things are due. They don't see that. And they shouldn't see that burden. But when they react to that because they're having a hard day, we shouldn't be as hard on them. I think, we shouldn't pass down that stress, because that's our responsibility. It's time for them to be kids. They got plenty of times for stress and bills and everything. So that's the main thing, is not to pass the stress along. I'm not saying bottle it in, but there's a time to let it out. Okay. There's a time for everything. I think there's a time to be stressed, but kids need to be shielded from that to a certain capacity. They need to know it's real. They need to know that there's a responsibility, but they don't know that you're on wit's end, because they need to understand that stress doesn't pass on to them. That's not their responsibility. They shouldn't have to worry that what are we going to do to pay the mortgage? They shouldn't have to worry about that, right? And that's hard. It's hard not to pass that along. It's hard to put on a smile and say everything's okay, but they pick up on it. Children are empathetic, right? They know when everything's not right. It's a balance. Everything's a balance. Life is a balance.
Yeah. So how have you learned to temper yourself?
I think with the experience, I guess. I understand when I lost my temper and I look back on it, I see the impact it had with not only myself, but my family around me, my kids, and how they looked at that. And they're going to understand they're going to learn what's acceptable and not acceptable as they get older. So whether you realize it or not, they're paying attention to you. They're watching you. Whether you're saying it or body language or what, they're human beings. They're small humans with their own personalities or their own thoughts and everything. And they're watching you, whether you want to know that or not, every step of the way. So it's our responsibility to not mask everything, to make it real, make emotions real, but to regulate those. And that's tough. That's part of growing up, right? So it's part of being a child, growing up to a man, learning to regulate those emotions, not to be embarrassed of them, but realize they're real emotions, but it's what you do next that means the most. So If I'm infuriated, I got to learn that I can't go off and punch a hole through the wall. Okay. I got to be mad and then recoup and say, I'm mad, but what can I do next? And the kids see that. So that was really, it was the thought of what I'm passing on that really regulated me the most. Like, what are my kids going to pick up from me next, in their life when they get a wife or a girlfriend or, best friends or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. As they grow up, I want to know that they're okay. Their emotions are okay, but how to regulate them too, and what's too much, what's overboard.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And as I was listening to you, I was thinking about an experience that I am not proud of, right? There was
Mm-hmm.
a season in our life where things were really, really tough. And
Mm-hmm.
there was an instance with my kids, and I blew my cool. I mean, I just blew my top straight up.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And I'm being loud, I'm being forceful, I'm
Mm-hmm.
being domineering, I'm being verbally abusive, right? And I
Sure.
watched my son recoil. And I go, why are you stepping back? And he's like, I'm afraid I'm gonna get hit.
Yeah. Yeah. It breaks your
And
heart,
and
right?
that and that is not that's
Mm-hmm.
not me, right?
Yeah.
That I'm not the dad that lashes out and slaps my kids and all
No.
that, right? But that just but it made me one, it just hit my heart. I mean, it
Breaks it.
just
Yeah.
stabbed my heart and just go, man, what the heck are you doing, Jody?
Yeah.
You're letting a moment bring out the
Mm-hmm.
worst in you, and you're losing control instead of grabbing hold of those emotions, those
Mm-hmm.
feelings, and addressing them in a productive way. And immediately I said, I am so sorry.
Yeah. You're just remorse
Please
hits your
forgive
heart.
me. I literally was just breaking down with him, and I'm like, I am so sorry. At this moment, I clearly am not at my best, and I never ever want you to feel afraid of me. And
Mm-hmm.
whether that is afraid of me verbally or physically, that
Yeah.
is not acceptable. And you
Yeah.
deserve better, and I will be better as your father. And I that was just a profound lesson for me. And
Mm-hmm.
like I said, I'm not proud of it. Dude, it
Sure.
was one of my, not one of my pillar moments as a
Yeah.
dad and as a man, as a human, right? But I had to own it and I had to say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times some men squash their children's hearts because one, they are dominating, and two, if they are sorry, they never come and own
Yeah.
their weakness. They never come and say, you know what? I was not at my best and I will be better. Will you forgive me? And I'm really, really sorry.
Yeah, we all have faults and we're not perfect, and it's important for the kids to understand that we're not perfect. And I go back on this, like what you do next. I mean, they can be empathetic to the situation, and it's like I'm overreacting, and I know better, and they don't, so they see that reaction, and I'm guilty of the same thing. I think we all are. I think we all are. We're not perfect. There's no man or woman in the world that hasn't overreacted to a situation because we're overcome with emotion. That's just who we're built to be. And sometimes we just can't cope fast enough. We can't process fast enough, and our emotions are way faster to react than our mind is. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, we've got this hard impact, this hard emotion that hits us all at once, and we overreact. And as we back up and get some perspective, we're like, wait a minute, I just affected everyone around me. Not just me. I blew up, but everyone else watches me. And in your family dynamic too, they can see that and say, hey, wow, I'm scared. I'm hurt. I'm reclusing, right? I'm recoiling up. And you don't want to have that impact on your children to be afraid of you because you're overreacting. You don't want them to think that they'll get the same reaction if they do the same thing. So it's a balance, man. It's tough. It's tough not to do that. I'm guilty of it even today. It's less often, but it still happens. It still happens.
Yeah, and it's tough. But I think the important thing is that when you have those moments and you own those moments
You have to own
and
them.
you
Yeah.
ask forgiveness,
Mm-hmm.
and then your kids see that you're being better,
Yeah.
they see what can be and they
Mm-hmm.
want to model that. But if you're saying I'm sorry and then the next day doing the exact same thing, and the next day, all of
Mm-hmm.
a sudden your sorry is going to resonate hollow in their hearts, and they're not
Yeah.
going to believe it, and they
It
are
doesn't
going
mean
to shut
anything.
down. It
Right.
doesn't mean anything, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's important for us men, when we do make a mistake, that we own it and we become better,
Yeah.
that we
It's not.
use that mistake and become more than we were at that moment.
Yeah, it's not the mistake that defines you as a human being or a man, right? It's what you do next that defines you. So the children need to learn that as well. It's not what you do right then or how you overreact, but owning it. You're right. I mean, owning the situation, saying, "Hey, I'm wrong. Hey, I'm still right. I overreacted, but I still believe in what I said." There's a balance. There's an understanding that the kids have to know, because they don't have any perspective like we do. So we can't
Yeah.
overreact and just shrug it off and not explain ourselves, because all they
Yeah.
see, they can't read our mind. So all they see is the overreaction and then shrugging it off. So they're going to emulate that overreaction and shrugging off like it's nothing. They don't see the turmoil inside. So I think it's important to own it, to explain to them, I messed up. That was wrong. That's not okay. I should have handled it like this. Next time I'll do better. That's
Yeah.
important.
I love that.
That's an important differentiation. Yeah.
I love that. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time. We've gone deep
Yeah.
down, like 3 core discussion. I mean, we could go for an hour, 2 hours easy, but I want to be
Yeah.
respectful of your time, because you said something at the beginning. You've been so busy, and it's like when you're a rock to other people, it's easy to be busy, right? Especially when
Yeah.
you have a servant and a loving heart. People
Yeah.
know that they can turn to you.
Yeah.
And that's really, what I'm hoping to create as we have these discussions, to be open and share these stories so that other men know, you know what, you're not alone. You're not the
Yeah.
only one that
Yeah.
has weak moments, that you're not at your best, but there also is a path
Yeah.
to becoming a better husband, a better father, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about holding yourself accountable and going, you know what, I can be better and I will be better. And especially, I will be better with the grace of God as he walks with me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's called, I call it anyway. I don't know what it's called. I call it servant leadership. Okay. So there's a God above me, and then it's me. I'm the head of the household, and it's my wife and my children under that. So there's a hierarchy involved. And people need to know that depression's okay. It happens. Okay. But there's a way out. If you're living in darkness, it's okay. There's a way out. There's light at the end of the tunnel. There's a way out of everything. I don't care if you're rock bottom. The beautiful thing about rock bottom is you can't go any way but up, right? You just have to make that step. You have to make that climb. You have to make that conscious decision. I'm not going to be here anymore, and move up. And I think it's important. And you're right. People do lean on me, and I'm sure you and other individuals that are a servant leadership, that you're the rock to others because you feel indestructible. But we're not indestructible. We're easily phased too. We're hurt. We're emotional, and other people's we're empath. So other people's emotions affect us just like it's happening to us. Even though we can handle
I
more,
love that.
but we have to do what God's built us to do. And we have breaking points too, but we can't just be the bobbing head. We can't just say yes. We can't have to be the yes man. Sometimes we have to say no. Sometimes we can't be the people pleaser, because it will rob us of our joy and our time and our love too, because there's a balance, like everything. There's a balance in helping. There's a balance in our personal life. Everything has a balance. So it's important to differentiate between two, or the three, rather.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time, guys. As I'm listening to you, I want to this conversation and reflecting on it. I want to invite you to go out to Barnes and Noble and Amazon. Go check out my book, Learn to Dance with the Currents of Life When You Feel Like You're Drowning, because sometimes we feel like we're drowning.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love this conversation. It's given me a lot to think about, that I will be thinking about. I want to thank you once again Kirk, for joining me. And please go love on your wife and your kids, and have a great day with them, man.
Jody, I will tell you, you've had such a huge impact on not only my life, but many people's lives. And I want to commend you for what you do daily and the dedication you have, not only your time, but energy into bettering people's lives. It means a lot.
Well, thanks, man. You know what? It's
and there's an impact.
You know what?
I respect it.
It's all about having impact, right? We've all been through something,
impact.
and sometimes we feel like we're alone. And if we can see a little bit of a blueprint that we can implement in our life, right? Because my blueprint's not going to be exactly right for you.
Sure.
But if you can take the lessons and go, you know what, that fits my personality, that fits my situation. Now, then you build your own blueprint, and then you become the blueprint for somebody else. And that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, so you can pick up on the nuances of each individual, the best of everybody, and implement into your life. And let me tell you, you've got the impact, Jody. You're impacting people's lives. Man. And I appreciate that. I see it happening. I appreciate it. Really do. I have much respect for you.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. And you guys that are tuning in, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And we're going to check you same time, same bat channel just next week, right here on Father's Fire.
Yeah.
See ya.
Thanks, guys.